Well, you'll hear the first half of our conversation, which might be the entire conversation, but if it drags on, maybe you can just feed me back some comments through email.
Okay.
All right, it looks like we are live according to my note in the corner. So I'll start with the formalities. First, I need to confirm the meeting members. As I call your name, just respond in the affirmative. So, Julianne.
Affirmative. I'm here. Present.
Excellent. Brian Smith.
Affirmative.
Michael.
I'm present.
Brian Swanson.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
Bob Light.
Present.
Leslie.
Here.
Very good. And then we have tonight, John Sabatini is helping us out with the technology side. Let me see what I need to read here. All right. I don't know why this is so long, but it is. So I'm going to read the remote meeting rules, laws. So I'm Norm Corbin. I'm the chair of the Northborough Historic District Commission. This open meeting of the commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's orders suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the commission are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the commission to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so going to the Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Tonight, we only have one topic for this evening, and I'll explain exactly why we have to do this. And I'm going to read something. The last week or so, after I wrote that letter that we'll be discussing tonight, I was contacted by Elizabeth Sherver. She's with the Mass Historic Commission, and she was very helpful explaining how this all works when it comes to demolition of National Register buildings. And she sent me she actually sent me the law on how that all works. I also spoke with the state building inspector, Eugene Novak. Because it's on state grounds, the Northborough building inspector does not participate in anything to do with the state properties. So he forwarded me, and I had a nice conversation with Eugene. This week, on Tuesday, there was a meeting with the town members and the DCAM group. The DCAM is the department of, I always get that one wrong, but it's the department that essentially is responsible for all the state properties. They presented the new construction that they want to put on the site. So that was not really focusing on the demolition, it was focusing on the new construction, but I also mentioned my concerns with, how the demolition would occur. Tomorrow I have to make a phone call to Fabrizio Caruso. He's also with DCAM. He's a deputy director, and he wants to talk about our concerns with some of the buildings. And finally, I contacted the Westboro Historical Commission because some of the demolition is also occurring on Westboro property. It's just a piece of a building. And I want to understand what they've done in the past with all the construction going on over at their part of the property with the new residential complex. So before we go to the letter, I do want to read something. And let's see, you can hear me, right?
Yep. Yes,
all right. So this is what I got from the Mass Historical Commission. It's a long paragraph, but if I read the whole thing, then we'll all be on the same page, okay? So this is it is actually Mass General Law 950, Chapter 9, Section 27, if anybody wants to look it up. It's about 10 pages. I'm only going to read the introduction. So the purpose of this law is to eliminate, minimize, or mitigate adverse effects on properties listed in the State Register of Historic Places. It establishes a standardized procedure to protect the public's interest in preserving historic and archaeological properties by directing state bodies to notify the Mass Historical Commission as early as possible in the planning process of any project either undertaken by the state body or prior to the state body's funding or licensing, in whole or in part, a private project. The Mass Historical Commission will determine whether the project will have any adverse effects, direct or indirect, on any property listed in the State Register of Historic Places. The Mass Historic Commission must make a determination of effect within 30 days of receipt of notification. This is the timeline. This is the reason why we're having the meeting tonight, because if we wait 30 days, if we wait till our next meeting, we will pass the 30-day requirement, which means they will ignore anything we say. That's why we're meeting tonight.
Yep.
If the Mass Historic Commission determines that a project will have an adverse effect on the state register property, then the commission, the state body, and the private project proponent will immediately consult to discuss ways to eliminate, minimize, or mitigate the adverse effects. Of course, we all understand the adverse effects here is the demolition of the National Register buildings. The state body or the private project proponent undertaking the project must adopt all prudent and feasible means to eliminate, minimize, or mitigate adverse effects. So the key sentence is prudent and feasible means to eliminate, minimize effects. There's the details of the process are in this article, are in this law. Establish a forum for the resolution of dispute arising between proposed developments and historic properties. The emphasis of the process is on interested parties negotiating an agreement after a thorough and good faith examination of alternatives. State law does not give the Massachusetts Historical Commission veto authority over proposed developments. It does direct state bodies to adopt all prudent and feasible means to avoid damaging historic properties. The Mass Historic Commission's role is to provide information, technical assistance, in a forum to assist project proponents in developing projects that consider historic values and preserve the Commonwealth's historic heritage. The reason I want to read that is because it tells us what we can and cannot do. With that, we look at the letter that I drafted for your review. Now I'm looking for some comments. I think I would change some things knowing that I know now. Just some of the wording. One of the things that's clear to me is the new construction, this maintenance building and garage that they want to put on the site. That new construction is going to be placed where the Chauncey Hall building is. The Chauncey Hall building is of the 4 National Register buildings, the Chauncey Hall building is the one that's probably in the best shape. The other 3, they're gone. I don't think when I look at the words, that say prudent and feasible means. So if we had a real reuse for that building in our hands today that made sense, then we might be able to argue the point. But the fact of the matter is, we don't have any plans for that building. We may not have any plans for that building for years. And I don't think we can try to negotiate to not have the building demolished. So that's where I stand, which is a little different, I think, than what I wrote in the letter. We could certainly ask for more photographs, especially I'm disappointed there's no photographs of the interior because they didn't go inside because of safety issues. And I don't know if that's how much of that is an issue. So, all right, with that, I'll put my letter up on the screen if I can do this right. I'm gonna start with the last picture. Whoop, let me see, how does this work again? So this way, go here, and there's supposed to be a shared screen somewhere, right?
Norm, the building has not been condemned, right?
The building has a red X on it. The red
Oh,
X,
it does.
it is not safe for a fire. If there's a fire in the building, it is not safe for firemen to go in and fight the fire. I don't think that means condemned, but I'm not sure.
Oh, really? I assumed that meant it was not structurally sound.
One of the, well, there are non-structurally sound buildings that have been rehabbed into very nice products that are on the National Register. But
Oh, no, I'm not saying, I was just curious. I wasn't,
yeah, no, that was the question I asked. Also, I asked the police, the fire chief in Northborough, what the Red X stands for. He told me. I went online, and it has to do with safety for firemen. So it's considered not a safe building, but I don't know if that means, it's derelict. I don't know if it's condemned. It just says firemen don't go in. I used to think that it meant it's unoccupied, but
I thought it meant it was, yeah, it's not structurally sound. Yeah, advises extreme caution. All emergency responders should limit firefighting to outside operations only. Does not show the building is to be demolished or rehabbed or otherwise. Interesting.
right. So, oh yeah, shared screen. Where did I find that? There we go. See if I can do this. Host disabled participant share screening. Is it possible, John, that you could let me share my screen?
Yep, hold on one second.
Thank you. Oh, welcome, Millie. You snuck in.
All right, Norm, can you give it a try now?
Yeah, yeah, that worked.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep,
Okay, so you guys can see this, right? This was actually in the letter. The only reason I'm showing this, I want to make sure we all know what we're talking about for this land. The first thing I want to mention, I've been on the committee for 15 years now. We have never, this is the first time we've ever been involved with the demolition of National Historic Register buildings. That's why I've been doing my homework, because this is all new territory for us, just as the background. So this is what's highlighted in the orange outline. That is the acreage that's in Northborough that's associated with the Westboro State Hospital grounds, according to our MIS mapping system. It's 307 acres. In the middle of it is the part where we're going to be speaking about, which has to do with the demolition of several properties around. Now, there's also 2 tank towers. If you can see my arrow, there's 2 water tanks that are coming down here. Everything else that's being demolished is in this area right here. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. The way I wrote the letter at the beginning, I wanted to express my dissatisfaction with our late notice of this information. As you saw what I read earlier, they're supposed to notify the Massachusetts Historical Commission essentially when the concept of this is going to occur, not after they've designed new buildings and met with other committees. And we're the last to know. It's not the way it's supposed to be done. I also voiced that complaint on Monday. So that's the first paragraph. I have 4 ideas for requests for additional information. And I'd like to spend some time on that. And yeah, before Millie and Leslie leave. So those are the 4 things I was thinking of. I think they're going to be a little different, but I'd like your opinion on what we should ask for. I'll blow it up if that helps you to read it. That's the italicized.
Yeah.
Norm, in the fourth point there is that something that we know that the state has done in the past, or is that just it's just sort of an open question there, like, hey, is there anything that you guys can do about this?
Well, when they widened Route 20 through the center of Northborough, we did get a little mitigation. We got that new historical marker that's in front of 4 West Main Street, that's on that big stone. And then we got a couple of benches that ended up in the new common. So that's minor, but that's something that we got. I actually called the Westboro Historical Commission. I talked to their chair and I said, what did you guys do when you had, when you gave the, you sold the land off from the state and then sold it off for the development? And she wasn't aware of anything. I don't know if it's a don't ask. If you don't ask, you don't get anything, or I think we should ask, but I don't know for what. You could say something like a nice sign, but I'm thinking, can we do better? And so I don't know, unless.
Yep.
A sign, wouldn't that be cool?
A sign would definitely be cool, Brian. And I think if you read some of this information, the Northborough section was considered the farming community of the state hospital, and that's where they had the barns and the cattle, pigs, and even the Chauncey Hall was actually the dormitory for the workers. But I'm just wondering, can we do better than that? Can we get something more than that? I don't know. There was some confusion at Monday's meeting, which surprised me. The people from the DCAM, so the Capitalist Asset Management and Maintenance Group, they weren't sure how much land was associated with that property. But to defend them, they were only interested in the 9 acres where the new construction is going. So I was kind of surprised. I said, there's 307 acres there, and they didn't realize it was anywhere near that kind of thing. And what came up in the conversation was, and because John Kadir was there, was, are they going to sell some of that land? Do they know? And that group didn't know, but I think it's something we need to find out. I don't know if that could be sold to the town, because the question was asked, was there going to be anything else developed on the site? And they said no. And then we realized, well, wait a minute, we're not talking about the 9 acre site where you're building that building. We're talking about the 307 acre site. Are you going to sell that off, and we're going to have what's going to go there? And that caught them off guard, but they're pointing us to other people that might be able to answer that question. But I think we need to put it in there. We need to have someone address that land. And I know conservation's always been curious about that property, and it's a big piece of pie.
So Norm, if there were native artifacts suspected to be there, would that affect the demolition?
No, that doesn't affect the demolition, but it would, if you do an archaeological survey, they looked for areas that could potentially have something, and they just flag that. So if some work is done out there, essentially say, okay, this area in the northwest corner of Chauncey Pond, be aware that there might be something there before you dig.
But
they can't stop the project.
Could a demolition potentially disrupt or disturb or destroy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, some of the ones that are in Northborough, one of them in particular, one of the big sites, has been totally destroyed for construction back 10, 15 years ago, but they fully documented it. So the part of this is, let's make sure there's nothing that could be there.
How about some spotted salamanders?
I don't know. I don't know what would that come under, Leslie. I'm not laughing because I'm
serious. I mean, that has disrupted the high school project for quite a while.
But what does that come under? Is that conservation? Who?
Yeah, it'd be conservation.
Conservation. Yeah.
And I thought there was an archaeological site. I thought that also had an impact on the high school. Maybe it's different because it was a town project as opposed to state, but
I don't know. That's news to me. Generally, these things, and they still, that thing that I read in the state document also implies archaeological sites. they can't stop the project, but you can find out what's there, you can recover it, you can record it, but it won't, they cannot stop the project. There's no way we're gonna stop the project. I think we're gonna figure out what we can do.
It's curious to me that the state seems to have engaged a lot more with Westboro on their parcel than anything in Northborough.
Monday's meeting was very interesting because, and that wasn't run through the town, that was run through DCAM, so that's not recorded. I don't know if I have the wording right, but they did not realize at the time that there was acreage in Northborough.
Okay,
Wow.
that makes sense then, why they
It was a
weren't.
hiccup in the system.
Hiccup.
Some hiccup.
Maybe we shouldn't have let them know. No,
If you don't know what your lot is, how are you building stuff?
yeah,
So I think there was a little hiccup there. I can't imagine what the acreage is on that property that the state had in Westboro. That's ginormous.
yeah,
So there were 4 topics. I'm just gonna go through them, make sure I get these basic things down. So the first one has to do with really, I think we would get more information about the physical condition of Chauncey Hall.
mm-hmm,
Like it's, what they put in the report, I don't think is sufficient for documenting it. I think we have enough information on archaeological sites in the area, and even information from the original National Register documentation that says, you should have someone walk the property and give this a think through.
yeah,
It turns out it was evaluated several years back, and maybe it's just a matter of getting a hold of that original valuation back, I think like 2007, something like that. Maybe it's just a matter of getting that document in place. All right. So the third one was, what are your plans for the 307 acres? And I think that's especially what might be for sale.
Norm, quick question. The 300 acres, that's state land?
It is currently state land, yes.
So it'd be the state that would sell that.
The state would sell that, and my understanding, what they mentioned, is Northborough would have first rights of refusal.
mm-hmm,
But it was all up in the air as to how big the land is and who owns it. Because if you go in our mapping system, you'll see around this state land that says it was associated with the state hospital. You go in one direction, you see Department of Fisheries has some land, and you go in another direction, Department of Agriculture has some land. So there's all kinds of state land all in that area. But this one is the only one that was associated with the state hospital. And so possible mitigation ideas. I think I will put in some historic marker recognizing the area. We might have to leave it open-ended and see if they come up with an idea on their own. I don't know what to ask for. I don't know if they could give us free acreage. I don't know if they'd give a discount. I got a feeling that wouldn't happen, and I don't know how they would even do that.
Norm, can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Julian.
Is it possible to ask if some of the old material can be used in the new building? To give the new construction, some sort of,
It's a good question to ask, Julianne. And I will show you, am I still on shared screen here? You still looking at this?
Yep.
Yes.
Let me find something else. What am I looking for? I am looking for this. All right, so this is the document that I received from Epsilon, and then I forwarded that, able to get a digital version of it. And let's see what I can do here. They have pictures of the design that they're looking at. And let me see if I can.
Norm, for clarification, that report from Epsilon, was that the first notice that we had about this project?
Absolutely. That is the first formal notice we had. By happenstance, I found out that they had already cleared this project with the Conservation Commission back in September, which is my irritant, is that we should have been first notified. If you have a project that involves in my mind, if the project involves the demolition of buildings to make the project go, you should really start with the people that are worried about the demolition, not contractors.
But the Massachusetts Historical Commission was involved from the beginning.
No,
right?
they got the same data as we did. They got the same document.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's the hiccup in the system.
So they should be as irritated as we are.
Concern. I already talked to them about that. All right, now where are the pictures of the building?
Yeah, I'm gonna head out momentarily.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
but I think the sketch of the building. Here we go. I got it too big.
I mean, I can hop back on. Or this other meeting should be pretty short, so
All right, well.
I might be back.
Hop back on if you and Millie, you can try. I think we got the core of it done. And I'll go through the other information, but the core is those 4 questions we want to ask them. So I think we've got the core discussed.
Do you need us to vote on that before we head out, or will you have enough if 2 of us leave?
Yes, I will. I will have a quorum even if you both leave.
Okay.
So come back after your other meeting if you'd like, and I'm hoping we'll be done by then.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be short and sweet and we'll be back.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hey, guys, thanks for showing up. I don't know why this is so big. So I'm trying to show you the picture of the building. This is the building they are planning to construct.
We're still seeing the letter, Norm.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll stop share. And then I go share screen. And then I go to this one. Now you still see the letter?
Yeah, no,
No, now we
Now
got
I
the new
see
building.
All right. So I'm glad you brought this up, Julianne. This is the building they are initially considering. It's a contemporary building and it's got a lot of advantages in terms of heat efficiency and greenness and the like. So it's a schematic. It's not cast in stone, but it was clear that the members of the town that were part of the meeting said, you know, you might run into some discussion about this design. This doesn't involve us in terms of the design, but
This is a maintenance building?
it's a maintenance building, and it's also they're consolidating their offices, so it's going to be like 20 people working there. A maintenance garage, and in the back some storage.
When you say they, you're talking about the state?
Yes, the state. DCAM is building a building for themselves.
So this has nothing to do with the development that occurred on Westboro?
Correct. Totally different. Has nothing to do with that.
So we're dealing with a state agency?
Yes, you're right. It's a state agency. So this was the first time anybody really viewed this option.
So I had a couple of questions, Norm, if it's okay. First is, you're writing this letter to Brona, right?
Yes, I'm writing it to Brona because
Okay.
she's the executive director of the Historical Commission, and
Right.
They're looking for our input.
She's the state archaeologist too, right?
Yeah, she does a bunch of stuff, turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems to me, she sent us the PNF that Epsilon sent. And I guess if I understand, she's asking us for our comments on what Epsilon sent to us,
Yes.
right?
Epsilon is a contractor doing this preliminary work for the state.
I understand.
Okay.
And the thing that when I read through the PNF from Epsilon is they seem to say in a couple of spots, if I remember, that there's no archaeological significant sites, which is contradicted in the PNF and also our own recent research.
Correct. So that's why when we go to the details of the letter, I'm trying to justify why we really are encouraging an archaeological review of the property. Because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But I mean, it's the Epsilon guys seem to miss that whole thing, and yet they submit a document that says that there's a lot of historical artifacts or archaeological sites in the area.
correct.
So,
Yeah, it's kind of so. And I think our role is to, it's checks and balances in the system. I think our role is to read through it and say, okay, well, you missed this. We think this is important.
Yeah, it would seem to me, since Broner is the state archaeologist, be pretty sensitive to, do an archaeological survey out there. So I would think that clearly would be something we could ask for. And we should, I think. Because there is sites out there that we know of. And the PNF actually referred to not only the sites we're looking at with the Native American, but also the settler site. They said in a couple of places that there are a very high potential for unmarked graves from when the farms were there way back. So, I mean, I don't think, what's that?
Yeah, no, I also read that. And along those lines, I also found an article about 4 years ago where it turns out, and I don't know if all of them, but it turns out that it appears that most of the burials associated with the Westboro State Hospital are actually, those burials were done in a potter's field in one of the cemeteries in Westboro. So Westboro actually has something like 600 burials in one of their potter's fields at their cemetery that are only the people from the Westboro State Hospital deaths.
So that's not on this site that we're.
Well, I think we should I was going to put that note in that. I was going to put the note in that it appears that most of the burials were done off-site. It hasn't really nothing to do with us, other than they didn't see that in their investigation.
Okay. Well, I thought they said something to the effect of, they're building basically on top of an old building, Chauncey Hall, for example. So they're not building in a place that already hasn't been disturbed, and therefore they're not likely to dig up any kind of archaeologically significant site because they're building on top of a site that's already been built on.
Well, what I'm trying to do is emphasize the 307 acres, not so much the 9 acres where they're putting the building, because
I agree.
I'm trying to separate those two things out. So, like, the design of the building doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. It will.
The only question I have is that beyond what our scope? I mean, could we ask them to do an archaeological survey for 300 acres when they're only going to be disturbing, 9 acres?
To me, my scope is the 307 acres, and we can always ask.
Okay.
What's the worst they can say? They can come back and say, no, we'll just do the 9 acres.
It seems like unless they are with this project, unless they're actually parceling out that piece and leaving that separate, then it seems like this involves the whole site.
Well, the demolition is kind of spread out, especially with the water tank, the 2 water tanks up on the hill. So it's a big, and to me, it's an avenue for us to find out what's going on there. Especially when I was surprised with Monday's discussion, where the people that were involved really weren't sure who owned what pieces of land other than that 9 acres they were interested in. So it's like, and that seems to be a funny loose end that should be locked down.
Yeah.
The project mentioned 15 buildings.
Yes.
Of those 4 of the buildings were on the National Register.
That's correct.
So are we only concerned with the 4 buildings that are in National Register, or all 15?
The focus here has to do with the National Register buildings because they're on the National Register. The way it works, if you look through the gory details of the document, you'll see a section that describes each. The site itself was put on the National Register. The entire Westboro State Hospital site was put on the register in the early 90s. And if they go through building by building, and there's a list that says which buildings are, I think it starts with a C, what the word is. Not conforming, but I'll use the word conforming. Contributing, excuse me. So of those, all of those buildings on the Westboro State grounds, both Westboro and Northboro grounds, some buildings are conforming in the sense that they are part of the National Register listing, and those are the ones that were built between 1900 and 1940. All the buildings are listed, but the ones that are specifically isolated they're also on the register in their own way. So it might be a number like 2/3 of the buildings are on the National Register and 1/3 not. So,
You know, on the first bullet item you have here, Norm,
yes,
I just question whether you want to send somebody in an unsafe building.
well, they
I
would
mean,
never,
is it of that value to risk somebody getting hurt by going in a building that's been determined to be unsafe to take some pictures? And I'm not saying I know the answer to that, but seems like the question is really, the building is pretty much dilapidated. It's not going to be savable. And I just am going to ask, why do you want somebody to go in and take pictures?
all right, now I'm asking the question if somebody could go in and take pictures and document the interior. Now, clearly, if it's very unsafe, the response will be, no, we're not doing that. But if I don't ask the question and they could get in and take pictures, I'd be disappointed that they should have taken the pictures. We're asking for things. They can decide if it makes sense, but we're just asking for things. At least that's the logic I'm using. I don't know if that's the correct logic, but I'd rather say that and have them come back and say, no, we're not going into the building.
What would the photos do in terms of changing your mind as to whether, I'm not even asked that. What would the photos do for you? Would it make?
If you look at, what are you guys looking at now? I don't know what screen I'm looking at with you.
The new building construction
Okay, so,
plan.
all right, I need to switch to something else. So let's see if I can do that.
That report has a picture of the Chauncey building.
Yes, and they're all exterior photographs. It's got about 6 of them. And I think that from an exterior point, the building doesn't look that bad, but who am I to say? So stop the share. All right, now I have to share the screen. This is getting pretty cool. All right, what am I looking for? I'm gonna think for a second. What was the photographs?
Well, I was just saying that you get these photographs of inside the building. I mean, they described the building as a 1930s, whatever the architecture was, but it was used as a place for, patients. And I mean, I'm asking the question, not only is it is it reasonable to ask somebody to go in an unsafe building to take pictures, but more importantly, once you get these pictures, what is the key decision that you're going to make with the pictures that you would make or not make if you didn't have the pictures?
Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and it's an interior of one of the dilapidated buildings, right?
Yeah.
That's the pump house,
That's the
Right.
pump out, right?
which I believe is in Westboro anyway.
Yeah, one of them is right on the line. So
I think that's one of the,
these are the Chauncey buildings. What
Right.
we're requesting is documentation of the building before it gets demolished. That's what we're requesting. And if they can't do it, fine. But if they can do it, it would be the building, once it's gone, it's gone. If you Google Westboro State Hospital old photographs or current photographs, there are hundreds and hundreds of photographs taken from inside the building from probably trespassers. I don't think there's anything on Chauncey Hall. So it would be, let's just document what the building was for posterity. And if it's safe. If it's not safe, it's not going to happen. But, to me, it's a matter of if we don't ask, they'll do nothing. If we ask, at least they'll consider it. Now, I'm going to call a fellow up tomorrow on this topic alone, so I'll know more where he's coming from. I'll know the answer to that question tomorrow, I guess.
you think this is a historic building to save?
Oh, it is. It's
if
on
we
the
can
that
save it?
building is on the National Register.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, I don't know. It looks to me like I guess I question whether it's that valuable.
No,
But-
well,
That's why I'm asking the question. What are the things that make it so valuable?
Well, if you look at if you go through the National Register listing, it goes through each building and describes what makes them valuable. This is the listing when it was originally written.
Right.
It has to do with the architecture.
They said in the PNF that it was a patient, used for patient, for patients. This, I think it was like mental health and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. They were the farm workers.
Okay.
I think, Norm, I think what you're saying, I think is, the photographs are to document what's there now before the building comes down. I mean, we're not going to use the photographs to try to save anything. There's no way.
We're beyond that. You're right.
It's just simply to it's like a last look around, right? When you sell a house and you take that last walk around to take a look at everything. It would just be to just document for historical purposes what the building was like before it came down.
And that's really it. And if it's not safe, that won't happen.
Yeah.
But according from Mike's question, let me see what we got here, just to answer that question while we have it. So this is, just so you know, this is the list of every building that used to be on that property. And it says the building, the date it was built, the design of the building, but the main thing is status. If it's a contributing factor to the National Register or an NC non-contributing factor. What I want to go to, am I going the right direction? No, here we go. I'm going to go to page 7. Okay. Let's see. Page 7, page 9 of section 7. This thing's huge. Tells you how much work it is to put something on the register. Holy crap. All right. Here we go. Number 38, K Building, Chauncey Hall. This is the description. This information is why it's listed in the National Register, that paragraph. I'm not going to bother reading it, but you guys can all take a look. So it's built in 1930 and it's something about its design. So like I said, I'm going to ask for the photographs, and if they can't do it for safety reasons, that's that makes sense. But I'm
Yeah. So Norm, I agree with you. I would recommend something wording in that paragraph just to say if there are no safety concerns, we would like the pictures for historical collection.
Thank you.
Something along those lines. Because I think that I'm not sure the way it's written now, they know why you want the pictures.
Well, I didn't know why I wanted them when I wrote the letter.
Okay.
now that I know more, I realize what we can ask for and what we can't.
Yeah, and then we would, we'll obviously say if it's obviously with if there's no safety concerns.
All right.
Speaking of collecting pictures, is there any sort of comprehensive collection in either Westboro or Northboro of this whole facility and the history of it?
Well, if you go, actually the document I sent out from Epsilon, it does copy the entire National Register documentation, and it's really quite thorough. It's really, and I'm sure that there have been books written on that site. Those little booklets like for towns and stuff. I know there's a little book just on that site. There's hundreds of photographs online, and I know there's someone who gives presentations on that about that site, which is
it was kind of interesting to me when they described the techniques that they used at the Westboro State Hospital. They were using relaxation. They have they talked about massage and water, kind of like a water therapy. And so they actually did mention using drugs like opium and all kinds of different things. So they did use, muscle relaxant drugs or more to kind of keep people sedated. But it sounded like the approach was homeopathic more than, just inject somebody with a whole wad of opium and throw them in a room. They were more, trying to bring them back to a state where they were, mentally acute without having to drug them too much. But it actually sounded like it was kind of a new technique, the way they were describing it at the time, at least. But, it's called at one point it was called the Westboro Insane Hospital. So the name kind of implies,
It's an
So I thought
interesting
that was
reading.
kind of
Yeah,
interesting and significant in terms of the history of the place, that it appeared that, they were trying to be a little bit more user-friendly when it comes to patient care.
all right. So if anybody's interested in really just read the National Register documentation. It's pretty insightful. You'll learn a lot about the place.
So all the other buildings, though, really are just,
Well,
no
they're
big
derelict.
deal.
They're
Yeah,
derelict.
they're falling down. The power plant, you don't really want to save the power plant. The chimney is going to eventually, the 50-foot high chimney is eventually going to crash down. And if it's taken down properly, it's going to prevent somebody from getting killed when it comes down. So the only issue is Chauncey Hall. But, I just didn't want anybody to go in there and getting hurt. But as you say, let them make the call.
Okay. So I think we've covered the core of those 4 questions, and I'll make some, before we move on, I want to make sure I hit things I should include. So I should somewhere include not only the archaeological survey, but something to do with environmental conservation survey in terms of salamanders and the like. Just, I think that's missing. They may have already done this, but we don't know that. Then comment of, is there any chance that salvaging some of the old material might be able to be utilized in the new construction? It's worth asking. I'll make a comment on what I learned about burials off-site in case they don't know that. This is going to focus on the 307-acre parcel, not the 9 acres that they're going to do the new construction on. And then I'll make some kind of a note about safety concerns if they do photographs that really want, obviously we don't want them to take, we want it to be safe.
Do you want to mention the archaeological information that we have acquired recently about, the different sites that are close nearby that we're aware of?
Well, that's in, so I'm going to scroll down through the rest of the letter, okay?
Oh, okay.
So this is this particular comment has to do with my concern, demolition of National Register buildings and the fact that, it's a National Register building. I'm going to reword that because the real emphasis here is additional photographs, not anything other than that. This is regarding the Native American archaeological sites. And as you can see, can you see my screen? Are you
Yes.
looking at my letter? Okay, so the nomination documentation, which is what was done back in the 90s, says these are the sentences that were in there. A high potential exists of the recovery of prehistoric sites within the bounds of the Westboro State Hospital. The landscape has favorable locational criteria for Native American subsistence and settlement activities. However, the documentation, and then it also makes a note of some documentation by Hoffman in 1992, which should be reviewed. And somebody needs to take a look at that and see if that covers the area that's also Northborough. The reason I'm putting that in is because the statements, if you go to the top paragraph, the statements in from Epsilon read, no known archaeological sites are within the project site or in the immediate vicinity. They also say that no significant archaeological resources are anticipated to be impacted as a result of the project. And that's completely inconsistent with what's read in the National Register. So they didn't read the National Register to get the wording in sync. And that's the driver, that's part of the driver to look for more. And then as Mike was saying, 2 things, they looked at some archaeological base maps, which is what Mike and I had access to, and those are all done by happenstance. So it's not like someone did a thorough review of where the sites are, it's just somebody tripped on an arrowhead and recorded it. So I went through and looked at some that are local sites, so I'm gonna run these through. So these are the reasons we want to justify more an archaeological survey. The Old Stone Brook and Crane Swamp sites, which are on the Northborough Marlborough line, have over 1,000 artifacts in it, and it's only a half a mile away. A site near the Brigham Street, School Street intersection had some artifacts. The Cedar Swamp, if you ever want to find something very interesting, the Cedar Swamp Archaeological District has artifacts dating back to 200 BC, and it's 2.5 miles away. Thank you, Mike. There's also another site in Northborough with about 100 artifacts. It's about 1.5 miles away. There's also a native burial site near the Northborough Marlborough line, which we don't know exactly where it is, but it's in the order of 2 miles away. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the area, and I want them to recognize this to justify making sure, somebody takes a look-see at what's on our site. And then I go into the thing with the Native American Trail, which would right smack through the site.
That's a lot of good information there, Norm. And I think the wording on that recommendation, I think should be a little bit stronger.
For the architectural?
For the archaeological.
The archaeological.
Yeah, I keep saying, I get those two words mixed up, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way it reads now is we recommend that DCAM have an archaeological survey. I think we want to be a lot stronger on that.
Okay.
Given all of the above information, we strongly recommend or strongly request or something.
That's why I was asking the question earlier about, can you ask for something like that if they're only disturbing the small acreage on the footprint of the buildings they're going to demolish? To do a 300-acre archaeological survey, which I would love to have done, is a big undertaking. And, the pushback could be, well, we're only disturbing, 6 acres that have already been disturbed. So we're not building on any kind of known archaeological site because it's already been addressed. So to say, well, we want you to go do a 300-acre archaeological survey might be, and not that I disagree, but might be asking a lot when, I guess you could ask for it, like you say, and if they say no, but at least you can disagree with their wording in the thing, because their wording is completely a topsy-turvy, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm under the impression, my logic is always ask for the moon and settle for something else. If you don't ask for it, you won't get anything. Hey, she's back.
I was thinking, I wonder if you could maybe compromise or say, we'd like it to be a half a mile radius around the disturbance to maybe.
I'll let them come back with any compromise. And
okay,
this is, so I don't know what happens here. Like I said, we've never been through this before. So we're going to send this to the Mass Historical Commission, and they're going to pull together a formal response between the Mass Historical Commission's input, the Northborough Historical Commission's input, and the Westborough Historical Commission's input, and anybody else who wants input. And I don't know how they pull this all together and then go back to the builder, the Mass Division of Capital Asset Management, and feed them back what they need to do or what they should be doing. They could, I don't know how the system works. So I'd rather ask for anything and see what drops out down the road. I don't think there's any harm in asking. They just think that we're just we're not asking.
At least you're raising a flag, and if they say we don't, the law doesn't require us to do a 300-acre archaeological survey, at least you got it on the record that you are, made them aware and disagreed with their statement that says there's no archaeologically sensitive sites in the area. So I guess from that standpoint, at least you're, on record of saying that they should do something.
Now we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And just, if you look at that map, now you're looking at the map, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you can see that red line. I mean, that red line is drawn over Ball Hill, right between Lake Chauncey Pond, Little Chauncey Pond and Lake Chauncey. And it goes right through the site that we're interested in. So most people don't know that, and I want them to recognize it. Look, there's some interesting history here. I don't know if this is something we have to vote on, but if we feel more comfortable, we can do that. We can I can make a motion that someone can so move it and just talk about the changes I'll make to the letter. Do you feel comfortable doing something like that? Do you just want to take a consensus statement? I'm not sure how we're going to do this.
To accept the changes?
Yeah, we pretty much, I think it's the same information. We just rehashed some more detail over what we discussed before the two of you had to leave. And trying to decide if we should, I don't know if we should vote to make these alterations that I need to incorporate, or we just take a consensus that we're going to make this. I don't know. Whatever anybody feels more comfortable with.
I don't know about voting. You're going to come up with some ideas about that. And I don't know about voting.
Just write the letter, Norm. I mean, we had our say.
Yeah, and it's all recorded.
Yeah.
Write the letter, send it in. You know what, I mean.
All right. I know what to reword, and I really get a good appreciation from this discussion. It was really the right. I'm glad I went this route to get everybody's input, because
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
it's just too new. And I just yeah. I hope we don't have to do too many of these.
I'll say for the record that the initial draft of the letter is fantastic, Norm. That was really, really well done.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I'll tweak it with these other things, and I'll get it off in a day or two and see what happens. I mean, the demolitions are going to occur. The buildings are going to come down, and it's a matter of what should be done before that at some part of this project. So,
Norm, are you planning to let us see the letter again?
I will send the letter. You will see it when I send it out.
Mhm.
So you get a copy when I send it out. It's this 30. I'm glad I spoke with the woman from Mass Historical Commission. They get notified, and it's 30 days. They got to turn the information around. So I really need to get this thing out. So,
Bob, were you asking to review it before the final went out?
nope.
Just a question, because if you were talking about voting, and the only way to really approve it would be to just have everyone read it and say, go ahead. That way you'd be on record that everyone approved it.
But the trick on that part is we would have to meet again,
Mhm.
and need 48 hours notice. We'll be meeting next week, and now I'm pushing the clock really close to, if it shows up late, they don't care.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
With that.
No, so that's the time. That's just the timing thing.
No, I'm fine with that. I just
Yeah, it's a good question, Bob. I mean, it's
because
know
it
what?
doesn't make sense to vote now. If we had to make a vote, it would have to be on the final letter. But I'm fine with letting it go.
You
Not
Can
like
I ask
can vote
one
to
more?
accept as amended.
excuse me.
You can vote to accept as amended.
Can I ask one more question, Norm?
Sure.
Yeah, the last couple of, you mentioned regarding future land use and possible mitigation of the town of Northborough. I wasn't sure was that part of something that we actually get involved in? It seemed like it was beyond our what we do as a historic society.
Well, no, we got involved when they did Main Street, and we negotiated the benches and the historical marker. That
Okay.
came through us. So, and again, we're gonna ask, and they can turn it down. But if we don't ask, and we could have done something, I'd be disappointed.
Okay.
Maybe I could make one minor suggestion, and probably I'm picking at some nits here, but maybe again in the phrasing of the last one, and making it a little bit stronger. what, maybe something like, what mitigation actions are available for the state of Massachusetts to provide to the town of Northborough?
I think that's great.
Run that by me. What mitigation actions?
What mitigation actions are available for the state of Massachusetts to provide to the town of Northborough?
I like that.
You're kind of setting the expectation. It's all about setting expectations.
Yeah, I'm going to use that approach, Bruce. Thank you. My husband.
All right, so I know what I need to do. So right now, the way it sits right now, I'm going to incorporate our comments and send the letter out. We're not going to vote on it. We're just going to trust that I incorporate your comments.
Mhm.
And this is, this is not a legal document. This is a document that's just informational with requests. It's, if it was something else, I'd say we have to do it a different way. So, all right, that's all I had. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Is that all right?
Yeah, yep, looks good. Good job. Norm.
All right, than's, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Somebody's gotta make a
Doing
motion.
this.
I'm
You need a
speaking.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah, and then I gotta do the roll call vote. All right.
Who
so
we adjourn?
Who made the motion? Bruce?
Leslie.
Oh, I know
Leslie
that.
made the motion. And who's second?
I second.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so they gotta do the roll call and then we are out of here. Brian Smith.
I accept.
All right. Bruce.
Hi.
Brian Swanson.
Approved.
Michael.
Yes.
Leslie.
Can I think about it and get back to you? Yes, please.
Millie.
Yes.
All right, we're all good to go. Thank you very much. Especially thank you for being flexible and having this extra special meeting. Hey, John, good luck with your retirement. Thank you for helping
thanks,
us
Norm.
tonight.
Yeah, I think you'll probably see me around the summertime, especially if the Zoom meetings go on any longer.
Don't threaten that with us. Take care.
Yep, thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Norm, for all your work
Bye-bye.
on this. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.